All right. Geneviève, thanks so much. I know it took us a while to get together, but I was introduced to you by um, who introduced us? One of my,
Jillian
yes,
Pritchett.
Jillian in London. I
Yeah.
was thinking Jillian, Geraldine. Okay, it was definitely Jillian because she used to live in Canada, right?
Yes,
So,
that's
you know her from
when we
those
met.
days.
Yes.
Got it. Well, I think it's really interesting because I love to have guests on that are producing products and in the whole supply chain because it's different than when you have a service. It's just a different kind of business. You have to produce it, you have to manufacture it, you got employees. So, but I'd like to start though with your background. Where you're from, where you grew up, what your training was. I don't know where you went to university, and then how you got, and then we'll work our way up to how you got into the food business and when you launched the company, and then we can talk all about that stuff. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, it's all yours. Let's go.
All right. So I'm born and bred Quebecer. So born
Okay.
in Quebec, Canada. And I've lived most of my life in Montreal. I went to school to start in psychology, did my bachelor in psychology.
Okay.
Didn't know what I wanted to do. So that just seemed like, okay, well, I'll just go hang out there.
Right. Sure.
And then I went to do a bachelor in public relations, which
Okay.
is like business communications. And I did that in 2 years because I got some courses credited. And so I hurried up and got out of the program and went to work, early 20s, and worked in communications in different fields. So in the public sector and private sector, event management,
Oh, okay.
and managing.
For corporations, like you were in-house doing their
Yes,
events, doing their PR.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
public affairs at a beer company, and I
Okay.
worked also as an independent consultant with a little firm. I was Santa Claus's press agent. He's a very, very popular guy.
I'm sure. That was
And
only in Canada, though, right? That was
yeah,
that. Right.
yeah, he lives closer to us than to you guys, right?
Exactly.
And
Oh, that's funny.
also, I got to do a lot of event management when I worked for a nonprofit organization, and that was all over the northeastern part of Canada. So I quickly, got the chance to try the different areas of my field and realized that I was looking forward to retiring quite young. So it was like, why didn't the shoe fit? Everything that I tried, it never felt like the right shoes for me. And
Right.
there was something so constricting about the job descriptions, and it was always like, such specific things. And basically, when you're on the work market, it's like you'll get the job that you're hired to do, and it's not you that decides what you're going to do, and you pretty
Right.
much need to conform to what your colleagues and your boss want you to do.
Right. It's not a lot of creativity.
And I just really didn't fit into that mold, and I didn't understand why. And finally, I was like, what's my problem? I was a high achiever in school, but yet in
Right.
the work field, it was just not like, I was never losing my job or anything, but it just
No, but
like,
you weren't that motivated, right? It
yeah,
didn't get you
yeah,
excited to go to work in the morning. A lot of
yeah.
people have that problem, and a lot of people don't do anything about it.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes I find there's some form of courage in that, because it's like
Yeah.
you have the courage to get up and go to work every day, although you don't like your job. Like, I would never have had that courage.
Right.
So that pushed me to really get out of my comfort zone and question myself about the fact that I might be an entrepreneur. And I kind of like realized that it was probably in my genes, because both my grandfathers were entrepreneurs, and
Okay.
so was my father. He owned the corner store. All my youth, was around that little business where we all
Yeah.
worked at the convenience
Like
store.
a general store, convenience store around the corner in
Yeah,
the
like
neighborhood.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like a 7-Eleven, for
Yeah.
you guys.
Sure.
And he was also a partner in a supermarket with other partners.
Got
So
it.
I mean, I would like be with my sister, and we would be alone in the big supermarket and just racing our carts and putting cereal in our carts, while my father was dealing with serious business, and he had some problems, but I didn't know it back then. There was
Right.
always a lot of smoke in the office. They were smoking a lot of
In those
cigarettes.
days, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, all this to say, I kind of like, you know, got to thinking that I probably was part of who I was. And then it's like, okay, where do we go from here?
Right. What are you going to do? You can make beer. I mean,
Yeah.
what other industries were you working for? It was a nonprofit. There was the beer industry. So you just like had a blank piece of paper, right? What am I going to do?
Well, I could have become a consultant,
Yeah.
but there was no way that I would have felt after 5 years in the field that I was competent enough to start
Just
offering my
being,
services.
yeah,
Yeah,
where
as a
you're
consultant.
not reporting to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I really by far didn't have the confidence. I wanted to hide behind a product.
Okay. That's a way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah. It's less, the rejection is less personal.
Right. They're just
So
rejecting the product instead of you.
exactly.
Right.
And
It's true.
and
I never really looked at it that way. That's a good comment. Yeah.
and at the same time, there was also the opportunity of when you do a certain type of business
Yeah.
that you can it can outgrow your personal time and resources. So if you're a consultant, you're working hard to
Right.
generate your salary. But if you're manufacturing a product, then the product can get manufactured while you're not working.
Right. It's much harder to be independent from the business if you're a consultant because it's really just you, right? People
Yeah.
want you. They're not hiring your associates. With the
Yeah.
product, they don't care as much. They're buying the product.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
see it a lot with other people around me who are consultants and they're still in the field and they've been in it a long time. They
Yeah.
work crazy schedules.
Yeah. They're just
They have to
solopreneurs.
jump in, to the
Yeah.
files, of their employees, and then
Right.
clients are asking for them. And so they're really prisoners of their businesses, and I
Yeah.
didn't want that. And I saw my father be a prisoner of his business, which was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And he always need to be there and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the employees would be calling home any time of day or night, like to either say they're not showing up, there was a holdup, there's no more gas, there's no more change in the cash, so
Right.
it was very, like overwhelming, and we can never leave on vacation more than a few days. And, I didn't want that.
Yeah.
know?
Sure.
And
Good you
so,
had that experience though to know that a lot
yeah,
of people don't realize and they get involved in a business and they become a slave to the business. Like you said, they
yeah,
can't go away. I mean, your dad had one store, so he couldn't hire like a manager because then he wouldn't make enough money probably to
exactly.
pay the manager. So he had to be the person that dealt with everything.
Yeah, and I didn't have that, false misconception that most people have, that entrepreneurs are necessarily all wealthy.
Right.
So I had realistic expectations of what I wanted for myself, but because my father was not wealthy, and yet he worked really hard.
Yeah. There's no
And
correlation.
yeah,
There
he
isn't. And a
never.
lot of entrepreneurs are just poor. Their business is just a
Mhm,
lifestyle business that supports their
yeah,
lifestyle. But if they stop whatever they're doing, the whole thing falls apart.
yeah,
It's definitely a myth and a misunderstanding about entrepreneurship. I think I agree with you.
yeah. And so, I mean, I've seen unhappy entrepreneurs in my life,
Right.
like in different stages of my life. And so yeah, I had some models to not
Right. Don't
copy.
let this happen to you like things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So basically got thinking about things that most people, don't figure out until later in life. And it's like, what's
Yeah.
my passion? Because you're just going through the motions. You're going to school because you have to go to school and you're getting your degrees. And,
Yeah.
you don't really have the time to think about like, what's my essence? What really drives me? What makes me
Right.
happy? Like that's a luxury, right? Asking those
Yeah, it
questions.
is.
And
I know. I think we should all be given the opportunity to do that before we go to college and kind of say,
yeah,
okay, what path do I want to go down? And maybe you will change it anyway. But I think you're right. A lot of kids in Canada and the United States, we just, we're raised in relatively, well-to-do families where, we have opportunities. These are first world problems, right? And we just don't know, right? We go to high school, you graduate high school, you go to college, like nobody ever told you any different. And then you find yourself out of college. You're like, what am I doing with my life? And it's definitely difficult. Yes. And you have a general major, psychology, marketing, whatever. And then what do you do? So
yeah. And you don't necessarily get to choose, because your marks decide which programs you can enter.
right.
And then you have to be really strong in certain programs to be able to go further. So, you're not choosing necessarily that much in your life. I wanted to be a doctor,
Oh
just by
yeah.
the
Okay.
way all my life I wanted to be a doctor until I went to study to college, and then I realized that it was really tough, like the level of science, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, I can't do this. It's too
I would think
tough.
a lot of people, a lot of kids do that. They get
Yeah,
there and they're like, this is difficult. Of course
yeah.
it's difficult, but yeah.
And then I was also turned off by the actual career because I was babysitting for the baby of two doctors, specialists. They were
Mhm.
never home.
Never home. No. Yeah.
And
You're a professional and you're slave because people really need you then, right?
mhm,
If you don't respond and you're a specialist or something, there could be a big problem. It's not like in law where I can deal with them tomorrow or whatever you're doing. It becomes life or death sometimes. And look, my son wanted to be going to medicine. 2 weeks into college, he dropped that. He was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to do this. My daughter wants to go into medicine. She's in her first month of school, first 2 months of school as a freshman. And so far, she's still sticking with it. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think you're right. Look, everything always looks more
yeah.
glamorous and better from the outside until you get in. And you really have to like what you do on the hardest days,
Mhm.
because there'll always be hard days in everything you do. But yeah, you have a lot of insight. I think a lot that people don't have.
You know, it's crazy schedules, let me tell you that. And so basically, I didn't want to become a slave to anything. Like I really wanted my full freedom. And you'll be happy to fast forward 20 years later to say
Right.
finally did you reach your objectives. But all
Yeah.
this to say that I realized I was passionate about food, and the thing that really made me happy and excited me and drew me in was like food, and seeing my grandmother cook and going to the restaurant and eating gourmet food. And I also was working out a lot at that time in my life, where I realized the a relationship between what I was eating and how I was feeling and the level of energy. So it got me very in tune to, I would be craving the things that my body needed. I was completely in tune to that. So I thought it was really interesting to see, what was offered in the stores compared to what my body seemed to be craving.
Okay.
And at this time, okay, I played restaurant for a year while keeping my day job. I did that
Okay.
once a month with my boyfriend of the time. And the restaurant was called La Fourmi Bionique. So that was the first venture of
Okay.
like, let's see, try this out.
So you said
And it was,
once a month. What, you opened the
yeah,
restaurant once a month?
well, you know what? It was an underground restaurant in my apartment.
Oh, it was like a secret, like
Yeah,
special.
yeah,
You got to know somebody to get
yeah,
in and
exactly.
taste Genevieve's food. So that probably
Yeah,
rose demand a lot.
yeah. Well, it was always full house, and it
Yeah,
was
it's once a month, right? You couldn't
yeah,
get in.
100% organic, and people had to decide what they wanted from the menu before they showed up. So I already,
Okay.
had prepared everything,
Yeah.
and my boyfriend was the waiter,
It's like a
and I was,
secret eating club.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
I like that.
And it had tables all over. We would remove all the furniture, push it in one room, and then there would matching cloths, and it was like, it was really
Like a
looking like a
little,
restaurant. It
like a
didn't
pop
feel
up.
like, yeah,
This was
exactly,
your
exactly.
apartment?
Yeah. And it was
I
in the
love it.
most trendy
Yeah.
neighborhood of Montreal. It's the restaurant neighborhood, and it was in the
Yeah.
middle of that, so it was the perfect location as well. Yeah.
There's a
So
restaurant in New York City. I think it's called La Esquina. It's a Mexican restaurant or Spanish or something. Anyway, you go in the restaurant, it looks like a total dump, and you won't want to eat there. And but you have to know somebody, and they take you through a back door and downstairs, and there's this huge, beautiful restaurant that you can't get in unless you know somebody and you have a connection. So it was like secret. I like
mhm,
that.
mhm.
And it's a good
Well,
way to test things, right? Because you're not taking a
yeah,
lot of risk. You're
yeah.
not leasing a place. Did the health department know about it?
No.
Well, it's
So
over
you
now, so it
say
doesn't matter. Right. I like
underground.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically I did try the granola in one of these events, and it
Okay.
was a brunch event, and it was a huge success, and I kept doing it for me and my boyfriend at home. And every time that we would have the granola in the pantry, we would kill it like it was cookies,
This
we'd
was
go
making
back
your
and
own
just,
granola, right?
yeah, yeah. And it was like the granola was, it took a lot of ingredients, it took a lot of time, but it
Yeah.
was like nothing I had ever tasted before. It was the most delicious thing ever. And there was nothing in
That
the store
granola
that
is like you're
compared.
putting like oats and grains and maybe dried fruits and nuts and all those types of things to come up with different recipes, right? It's
Yeah,
basically what it is. Honey, I don't know, some
that,
agent to bond it
yeah,
together. Okay. In your
exactly.
kitchen, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got really tired of the restaurant routine of it lasted a year, and
Yeah.
every time it was so stressful. It was so tiresome. And I had two seatings, one at 6, one at 9. I had to do the dishes by hand in between. There was 20
Sure.
people at a time. And I was like, this is tough. I don't have any training in this, and I don't see how I'm going to make any money. There were no grants offered for this type of business.
Right.
And my boyfriend at the time said, why don't you launch the granola product instead?
Good idea.
And my business plan was already developed, based on going towards the organic trend. And then I just tweaked it towards the cereal market. And I did a study that showed that the adult cereal market was really positioned to grow. And that all the people that were raised on cereals were going to be looking towards healthier options. And there was like all these statistics that were really supporting this move towards the cereal product. And so basically for a year, I left my day job, and for a year I did
Okay.
testing recipes with some people that were part of the restaurant experience, and they would be giving me their comments. I would be compiling. It was very data oriented.
Yeah.
And I just full time every day, put my apron on, did recipes every day. And then I started making some and selling it.
Yeah.
And then I went into this program for entrepreneurs and finalized my business plan. And started making it different caterers where they would rent out their kitchen to me for free.
I gotta stop you for a second to make a comment, because this is a really good lesson for all the people that listen, and the message that I'm trying to get across. A lot of people start off in business and they're all excited, right? And they go out and they buy huge amounts of ingredients and they make all this stuff. And then they find out that nobody wants the product. And you really, really, really tested what you were doing. You tested the concept of being in the restaurant business, although it probably was exhausting doing a restaurant like that, right? Because if you had a restaurant that was equipped, it wouldn't be so difficult, but you would be doing it every day, So doing it once a month was like having a production, right? It was like you had to get ready and it was difficult. So, but you learned what people liked and what they didn't like. And then with the granola, you tested and tested and tested. You wrote a business plan, you tested the market, you did the research. And I think a lot of people, they overlook the value of that. And you make a lot of mistakes that are very costly when you can test things as you go and find ways to do it, and do it, like you said, bootstrap it and do it to start before you go hire a co-packer and a manufacturing facility. And you said now you're finding commercial ways to do it, not by renting a kitchen full time, but by sharing it. And I think a lot of people should learn from the fact that you can, take little baby steps along the way and figure the path, because it's not a straight path from start to success. So I think there's a lot to be said for, and then you're in a program and now you're really working your business plan. I mean, you're really preparing yourself for success. Doesn't guarantee it, right? But it increased your chance of success by probably 10 or 20 fold than if somebody just making granola out of their kitchen, putting it in a bag and selling it at a flea market. So I think there's a lot to be said for that, and people can learn from your experience.
Well, I think that you need to be patient, and you see my boyfriend at the time was with me in this adventure, and then he dropped out because he's like, when are we going to start making money, And I said, well, it's not now.
It takes a while.
Yeah. And so, since I was still young, I didn't have that much of a high level of
responsibility, cost of living, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, I had no collateral. And, so basically I had to, go from grant to grant because I won these prizes and I got these grants.
Okay. That helped you go.
The strength of my business plan really, proved to be useful. All the efforts I had put in gave a lot of credibility.
Right.
To
you needed that plan, right? For the grant. You had to submit it with the grant. And
exactly.
Okay. So people should learn that too.
And then basically, I after 2 years of producing it part-time and being at a certain threshold of revenue, then I really want to have my own facility because it was tough, to share the kitchen, and it was depressing schedules and
you can't do that long term. You can't do it long term. No, not if you want to be successful.
It was painful. To be honest,
exhausting, right?
But the thing is, for me, failure was not an option because I didn't want to go back to the job market.
Right.
So this had to work. So I was really ready to do all the compromises. But now looking back, I wouldn't do it again. Don't ask
Well,
me to
now
do
because
that
you're on the
again.
other side of the mountain. So here,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Well, okay. That's for someone else to do in their business. You
yeah,
did that. I
yeah,
agree. Yeah. Failure doesn't have to be an option, but going backwards doesn't have to
mhm,
be an option either. You
yeah,
figure a way to keep going
exactly.
forward. Okay, great. This is a great story.
And then so basically in 2006, I got my my first facility. I got my facility, and it's still
That
to
you
this
could
day
use during business hours, seven
when I
days a week
want.
if you wanted to, whenever you wanted to. Okay.
Yeah, and it was too big for me at the time, which
Okay.
made it tough because it was tough because you want to like be able to grow into it. You don't want it to be too small too quickly, but at the same time, it was hard to lease anything
Yeah.
that was very small.
Yeah.
So
It's
it was
hard.
almost 4,000 square feet, and
That's big.
it took me a few years to be able to
Grow
have.
into it.
Yeah, exactly. And that my
Yeah.
employees would be working full time and that I would be
Right.
able to,
And
like
you had to
pay the
balance the
rent.
cost of the
Yeah.
space and you had to pay for it, right? So, and you couldn't sublet it. There was no way to kind of share the space at
No,
that time with anybody.
no, because like a food manufacturing plant is pretty hefty investments, like
Yeah.
because you got the equipment, the ventilation, and and you want
Yes.
it to be
Totally.
clean. But I had subletted it a little bit to somebody that was making bars, but it was like it was change
Yeah. It
that
didn't
I
really
was getting
help.
from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, so those were a couple of tough years, and then we toughed it out. We grew the sales. I mean, I learned to juggle with money and be extremely, cost efficient and savvy
Yeah.
with the traffic of my liquidity, and the in and out, and when to mail the check, and it was
Yeah.
a
Cash
very
flow.
tight operation,
Right.
very
Well,
tight.
but a lot of people don't learn that either. They don't learn the cash management side of their business and they get in trouble.
Mm,
They have some cash up front, and cash flow hides a lot of things. Like when you have money coming in the door and going out the door, you don't realize you're not making any money
yeah.
until something happens. So
No,
all these
until
things
there's
I think
no
are good,
more.
right? Until there's no more. Well, that's what happened during the pandemic, right? People were in business. Let's use restaurants, for example, right? All of a sudden they're shut down and they realized, oh my God, I wasn't making any money running that restaurant. And I'm working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I'm exhausted. And a lot of them didn't go back to that because they didn't do their homework to look at their numbers and really determine, am I making money? And is that increasing or am I not making money? And restaurants, yeah, because it all stopped. Oops.
But you're most of the time you're surviving for an
Yep.
X amount of years, right? Of an X period of years, you're surviving, and you think that you're failing until you succeed, because it's so hard, you're not making money.
Right.
But when you talk to other entrepreneurs, you realize, like some people that are in business over 20 years, then they'll share the war stories. They won't tell you they're in trouble when they're in trouble, but once they're
Right.
over the hill. And I remember this distributor that was, over 20 years experience had told me, man, the first 7 years we were in business, we made no money. And I wasn't at that 7-year threshold yet, but I was
Right.
not making money. And I was like, oh my God, okay, it's not me. Because I was taking it
No.
really personal. I was like, man, I'm so incompetent at making money. Why am I not able to make money?
Right.
But today I realize what a tough operation it is, because you got so many expenses,
Yeah.
and you try to
Whether you
anticipate.
sell or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you try to anticipate the level of expenses and revenues, but you try to anticipate, but it's never that. It never is what you're going to project, what you're going to tell your
Right.
bankers,
It
what
always
you're going to tell
changes.
the
Yeah.
partners. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never what you think. And there's always like, oh yeah, I didn't expect that. Oh yeah, that happened. Oh, that's going to cost us money. Oh, did we lose that? Oh, we had to pay for a plane, so it's like a constantly changing equation.
Right.
You can never just sit on your on the present. Things are always evolving, and you always need to troubleshoot. So
Right.
I had to get an angel investor in 2008
Oh,
finally,
good. Okay.
because I had pushed back for years a lot of opportunities to get an investor on board, and I didn't want to, because for me it was like somebody that's going to tell me what to do.
Right. You lose some control and stuff. Sure.
Well, it's like, they have a right to say what they think I should do. And that for me was like, oh man.
Right.
So, but I finally found somebody that had was well off, so would not be worried about his pennies and
Right.
always like be on my back.
So you found somebody who you were more comfortable with.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and that person was really wanting to invest. So finally, I think it was a very positive situation for both parties, and it took like 8 months before I said yes, and it was well negotiated, and it worked out well.
Yeah.
And it was right before the crash of
Yeah. Well,
2008,
I know it was
right
the same up
before.
there, right? Same up
Yeah.
in Canada as it was here. Yeah.
So
But there's
luckily,
another lesson there, though.
yeah,
Maybe bringing on an investor is a good thing, but don't jump into it. Don't say, wow, this person's going to
yeah,
save me and bring in all kinds of money, because you may regret it if you don't pick the right partner who supports you in the right way.
yeah,
So, and you were reluctant about it, and he finally convinced you, or she, I don't know who it is.
yeah. It's a he.
Okay. So
He,
2008, like in the United States, the housing market completely collapses because all this ridiculousness going on Wall Street. And you're like right in the middle of it, right?
no, I'm sitting on my money.
Oh,
I
good.
have it.
Okay.
It's in my
Okay.
bank account, and I'm really
Good.
happy.
Good. It's not in your house, right? Or a
Yeah,
piece of real estate. Okay.
yeah. No, and you know what? That's another important piece of advice. Is I sat on that money. I used it for leverage for debt. So my investor thought that I would be coming back for cash eventually, and he would be taking more ownership. And at that time, I had given him 25% in exchange for the money. And finally, I never came back to ask for more, because I used that money to leverage debt, and it was just
Aha.
sitting
So you could
there. And
balance it. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
I
you
didn't
didn't have
just
to give
like
up more
spend it.
equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, why aren't you spending it? I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend it. I
Yeah.
don't
No,
have to
it's what
spend
you'd
it.
learned. Yeah. Okay. Right. So don't bring in money and just spend it on the business. You might need to leverage it, and you create some debt, you manage your debt, and you keep growing your business.
Yeah. I had to learn to how can I say, live with debt, and to be comfortable around debt. Like
Right. Well,
a
that can be a
few,
good thing if it's
yeah,
managed properly.
yeah,
It's that a
yeah,
lot of people don't manage it properly.
yeah. Well, just because you have access to so much, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like how much you have access, and then people don't realize that you should see debt as a level of spending or a level of revenue that needs to be added, or profit. Because yes, you're going to get 200 grand to buy your equipment, but you need to pay it back, which means you need to buy this equipment. So you need, on 4 years, if that's your grant time, or 5, well, you need to expect to make that much profit to be able to pay for that,
Yeah.
you know investment,
Yeah.
or it needs to
Again,
pay
knowing your
itself by
numbers, right?
generating profit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know your numbers
yeah.
and what you need to do in terms of business development to make this investment make sense,
Mm.
make the debt, buying the equipment make sense. And you knew that. A lot of people don't know their numbers. It's a huge problem in the entrepreneurial world.
Well, it's because most people, they have one skill, right, which they hone, which is like, either they're very competent at, the product development, or at
Yeah.
the sales side. But when you're in business, you cannot turn away from your numbers, and that's where you
No.
learn. Like people, like they turned away from their numbers. They say, not that long, but then they do bankruptcy. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't, on top of my accounting. Well, it's like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're responsible for your numbers, and you need to
Yeah.
own them. Otherwise, you know what? You're really relinquishing control of your business
Yeah.
to like outer forces,
And
whether
your
it's your
risk is so
accountant,
huge
or,
because there's so many
yeah.
things that could go wrong that you don't have control over. I think it's huge. I think it's probably, look, a lot of people, they don't do their business plan. They don't know their markets. They do this. The biggest mistake I think entrepreneurs make is not knowing their numbers, their money coming in, their money coming out, the cost of their equipment, what they need to do from a sales standpoint. I think sometimes they're afraid. Like they don't want to know the truth, really, that they need to sell 100 units to break even for this product, and they're only selling 10, So I think people shy away from that stuff. Also, I think a lot of us are like right brain entrepreneurs, right? So we're very creative. We like all the creative stuff, creating the labels and the marketing, and then we go, I don't like math, and they get away from it. So then fine, then you better build it into your budget and find a finance person that you trust who can help you. Don't just give it to them, but can help you with those numbers and knowing your numbers. But you're right, 100%. You have to know your numbers, or you will fail. Just no question about it.
Yeah, and you can just get coached. I didn't
Right.
study in accounting. Of course, I think that the fact that I learned along the way, it probably made it more difficult to reach my financial objectives because, I had to learn by many mistakes. But at the same time, I went through a coaching process and I invested myself and I did my accounting for years until I finally let it go. So I really understood how it worked.
Right.
And it was not my favorite part, but at the same time, I slept better at night, knowing exactly what the numbers were and knowing if I had money in my bank account and how long it was going to last me for. It was a certain level of control that I think was healthy to have on my business, and
I
making the
agree.
really good decisions based on the money that I know I have or don't have.
Right. Because this way, when you hire a bookkeeper, you're hiring an accountant, you know how to read the reports, you know what they
Yeah.
mean to you.
And when
because
there's
your numbers.
mistakes,
Yeah. Right.
when things are not working out, you can quickly monitor things. You're not blind, like, okay, if you say it is this, okay, that's what it is,
But it's not right. And you know immediately when things don't look right.
Yeah.
So used to
So,
looking at it. Okay. This is great conversation. I love this.
so,
Okay.
so basically, I'm still in that same facility 20 years later, but now
Okay.
we have 11,000 square feet. So we've
Oh, there was room to
renovated.
grow. There was room to
Yeah.
grow within the building.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was
Got
a
it.
very large industrial building, and they've given us expansion space as the years went by. And
So the 4,000 was as small as they would do at the time. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
And so, I mean, we started with just a granola line, which was a classic home style granola made with honey. And what was the signature aspect of Fourmi Bionique was adding really high-end gourmet ingredients. So I was the first to start adding fair trade organic chocolates.
Okay.
And since then, a lot have followed the parade, and I think we were a very important trendsetter in the market because everything that we did, it got repeated or copied. And so
Okay.
there's a lot of very well-known brands that do things that were based on our trend setting that people
Good.
don't know about.
Yeah.
So we're like this little, niche brand, very well known in Quebec, but that has a high impact in the category. We perform well, and we've been taking some shares from the competition, and really making a lot of a headway in the supermarkets. We also sell to the hospitality industry, and I've been actually exporting to France since 2008, and
Okay.
and that was just like, oh, we can get a grant to go to France. Okay, sure, we're going to go to France and bring a few samples and bringing them to hotels and bringing them to stores, like the store buyers of like Grande Épicerie, which is a really, really gourmet high-end store, and the Galeries Lafayette. They accepted to meet us, and we're like, what? What am I going to wear? And basically, they're like, sure. When can you send me a pallet? And we're like, oh man, how do you
Really
export?
that quick? Like
Yeah.
they want, yeah. And you weren't exporting at that point, right? It was just local in Canada.
So I wasn't making money the first shipments because, I mean, like, how much is it going to cost? I don't know. Okay, let's just give them a price. But now today we're listed in we have distributors, and we're listed in Monoprix, which is a very high-end supermarket, and we still have the same listings that we had back in 2008. So our products perform well, and even there we've trendsetted the category, and we've been imitated by local companies.
Fantastic.
But we're still like, holding our own in this market,
So is that, you're mostly selling wholesale over there to distributors, or do you also sell directly to, you're dealing directly with the retailers? I mean, either way, you're a manufacturer, but.
Well, I used to deal directly with the retailers, and now I'm going through a distributor, which
just much easier.
Wholesales, and then he can sell through Amazon to the, my different markets. Yeah, that's a lot better option for me.
And do you use a freight forwarder, so from a logistics standpoint, so you don't have to, because I mean, at first I'm sure you're like, well, how do we ship this stuff, right?
Yeah. It was very expensive too, but now it's part of my agreement with my current distributor that he buys it from my plant. And so just tell me when I need to ship it and
so
where.
He has his people or whoever he's using, pick it up at your plant, and then it's on him for the rest of it.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the only place we're really actively exporting. I mean, we've done some stuff in Spain and in Germany, but it's marginal sales compared to what we do in France. And we pretty much sell nationally in Canada now, and we're selling a little bit to the States through our online store, which has just been up since a few months now. So
Okay, so you're just coming into the States. So there's no retail locations. Like I can't go somewhere in New Jersey, like the Whole Foods, and buy your products. I have to buy them online in the United States so far.
Yeah, I wish I could say yes, but no, not at this point. We're not.
I'm sure
We're
you'll
not.
get there.
Well, I mean, we were in discussions with Kroger just a few months
Oh, sure.
ago,
Yeah.
but the logistics of dealing with that such a big market and having representation in that market, it'll take some time before we can set that up, but we will.
Yeah, you probably have to find like local smaller chains to start in different parts of the country. Like in New Jersey, there's no Kroger. It's more of a
Yeah.
Midwest thing. So, and
Yeah.
then there's some upstate New York, and they're getting gobbled up, but it's definitely a interesting market. So a lot of your food is organic, or it's all organic, clean eating, clean food, but you really have the social conscious kind of side of it, right? Because
Yeah,
you
yeah, we're
said
going.
fair trade.
Yeah. Well, we've always done the organic local sourcing. So we call it proximity sourcing
Okay.
because we've really pioneered that movement in terms of our category. So using all the cereal base is from the farmers that are near us that we
Okay.
purchase, and they're all organic. And using the fair trade chocolates, which are very high end, so they're not only extremely high quality and delicious, but they're also socially responsible,
Right.
sourced
Yeah, they're not
ingredients.
making children pick the beans and stuff, because you can't get chocolate in North America, right? It comes only from certain parts of the world.
Yeah. And then they are manufactured by a company in Switzerland, which has these agreements in which respects the fair trade laws of the certification. So that's allocated to the actual product that we purchase.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to be said with that. I've just interviewed a woman who's got a company called North Authentic, and they're a clean, organic beauty supply, like so hair, hair shampoos and skin creams and all that kind of stuff. And they have not only a specific list of things that they don't allow in their products, which makes it hard, obviously, to find the products they want, but it's the same thing that they don't want to deal with companies that are, have children filling jars in a basement in, Malaysia or something. So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said for that. But at the same time, everybody's buying clothes at H&M.
Yeah, I know. I just listened to a podcast about the clothing industry, and there's some of the big players are coming out of Bangladesh or whatever, and you don't really know what's going on over there.
Yeah, but now they're trying to say it loud and clear. But I think that people are gonna still want to be stylish at a low cost,
Yeah. So how do you balance that, right? The people buying it don't even think about it. They're like, oh, $9.99 for a pair of pants. Well, how is that possible?
Well, it's the same consciousness that we want to bring to food and eating. What's your relationship with your body? Like, why are you not giving it just what it needs and the right amount and the quality that it should require? Why are you eating all these things that are really useless nutritionally and not putting your focus towards the things that you would require as healthy fuel and probably positive physical image? I mean, you don't need to diet if you have a healthy lifestyle. And a healthy lifestyle, people think that it's extreme, like you have to exercise all the time and you're cutting out meat. And like, I'm not a vegan, I'm not I cut out nothing from my diet, and I eat very fatty foods, but in the end, yes, I do. And I love bacon. And
there you go. Bacon's delicious.
Yeah. There's nothing that's not part of, like, I don't say I block out this food, because I don't think that's the way you should eat. I think that first of all, your body will tell you what it wants. If you're attuned to your appetite,
right,
it'll tell you, and your body will tell you when to stop eating. And I see these people, they receive their plates and they're like, oh, there's a lot of potatoes, the portions are generous, and they're eating and they're out of breath.
Yeah.
But but they don't want to waste. But isn't it the same thing if you're eating too much food or throwing it away, you're wasting food because
Yeah.
you're
Either
eating
way.
food you don't need, you
Right.
know?
Well, I
And
think
in
our
the end,
bodies definitely sabotage us. People are pick the wrong things. They pick what they think tastes good and what they get excited about. Also, look at the food industry. They hide,
yeah.
there's ingredients like sugars and things like that in these products. Some of the names we never even heard of that are
It's
sugars.
shameless. It's shameless. And my father's there drinking his tomato juice and he doesn't take salt in his food. I'm like, do you realize how much sodium you're
Oh
drinking
my
every day?
goodness. Yeah.
But it's like a kind of blindness. Like people are like, like they're not, they've been told things for so long that they don't have any more critical sense about things. So to come back to the actual product is, I think that, pleasure is super important. And I eat chocolate every day for breakfast, every
Oh, I want to
day.
come to your house for breakfast.
But
Chocolate.
my best selling product, it's called the aphrodisiac, and it's like it's not because it's an aphrodisiac, it's because it's funny, the name. I
Yeah.
like, I don't take myself seriously. Like the name of my company, it's like the Bionic Ant
That's what
in
it stands
English.
for in French.
Yeah, the Bionic Ant. Yeah,
I love
like
it.
super strong little
Yeah.
ant. And so basically, and we're kind of a bionic ant making our way through the giants, in the
Yeah. That's a good
cereal
way to look at
aisle,
it. Right. Because they're
Yeah.
huge, huge
Yeah.
companies.
And we were the first first little brown bag to make our way there. And now we're taking a lot of room and they're just
Yeah.
imitating our product now,
Right. No, because most of the cereal industry, they grew up. They grew during a time when you used to have, I guess in the 1800s or early 1900s, cereal was just grains and things like that. And then they started realizing, wow, if we put sugar in this,
Yeah.
every kid in the world is going to want, and they produce these crappy products now, very processed, even the ones that seem like they're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Like all brand. It's full of sugar, but
All of
everybody
it.
thinks it's like a pure,
Yeah.
pure
Raisin
product,
bran. Yeah.
Yeah. But you see, like now I have, and to be honest, I have some Kellogg's in my pantry, but you know what? My kids, they're like, one's turning 4 and then 6 and 8. Okay. And they're asking to eat mommy's cereal every
Yeah.
day. They're
Right.
asking for it. They could eat the Cheerios. There's the other stuff in my pantry and they're asking for
They
mommy's
don't.
cereal. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you know
super
why though?
happy.
You're developing their palate a certain way that they like and they want to try those things. My wife is very much like that. She's a cook. She likes fresh, clean eating. My kids, since little, we never had, Burger King, or I shouldn't use the name, but we never had fast food or any of that junk. And my kids don't like it. They want to eat, fresh, foods that have flavor, but not because it's loaded with butter, sugar, or things like that. And that's something that people I think that they don't realize they can develop in their children just by having it in their home or living that way, as opposed to saying, oh, I'm really busy, mom, let's stop at Burger King and get a burger and a fries for the kid, or chicken fingers. Well, at least it's chicken. We know what goes into that kind of stuff. So I think that's because of what you're doing, why your children want to eat that. I don't think it's magic. I think it's the world in which you're raising them. That's just
I
my
also
opinion.
put chocolate in it. Mitch, just by the
Okay.
way, I put
Well, that
chocolate in
helps.
it. Yeah, it does. But they're
Yeah.
little piece of organic fair trade chocolate.
Right. And they're not all the preservatives
Yeah.
and the crap that's
Yeah.
in cereal.
Yeah, and they're sweetened with honey, which is also very different than all the industrials out there, because honey is a very capricious ingredient. It's expensive, and it's very variable because the bees, they don't always go in the same areas, and
Right.
the prices, and there's bees that are missing.
Yeah.
Because there's less
Crazy
places
industry.
for them
I know.
Yeah, and so basically we're still using the honey when nobody else is using it anymore, and so we've kept the product, the real granola, like you make at home, and the recipe has not changed since I was making it in my kitchen. It's the same one, but now, of course, we have larger ovens. We got, a robot helping the artisans working on the floor, and there's different equipment in my facility to make things more productive, and which makes us very cost efficient. We're also not the most expensive product, because when people were telling me, I keep my bag away from my kids or my husband because they empty it too quickly. Then
They're
I'm
going to
like,
eat it all.
That's the point. Yeah, I want everybody to eat it in your family, and I want you to eat it every day, not on occasion. You don't choose something that's healthy and good for you just
Once.
on occasion.
Right.
So then
like
I
a
made
special
sure,
occasion, treat yourself well, but other times don't.
Yeah. So then or managed to bring the price down and make sure that my production was able to follow this change so that the level of consumption would increase and I would be, purchased at the same level as any other cereal.
Right. So it wasn't just, I want, that's a business goal. You want to get people using the product more. So not only do they eat healthier, but you're selling more units. So from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. So let's talk about how you developed the company. So it started out as just granola, right? Artisanal granolas and I guess cereals. And now let's talk about the product line now. What does the company look like now?
Well, we got about like 40 SKUs, but it's so the granola, the grand granola, which is the classic granola line, it's available in 9 flavors and it's 2 sizes. So there's a small bag, which is 300 grams, and then the family bag, which is 850 grams. And the family bag is very popular because it's a very interesting cost saving towards the small bag, but the small bag is a good entry point for the customer. And then we have grain-free granolas, which we launched in 2017, which are very high-end grain-free blends. And they're under the same personalities, if I can say it, in the grand granola. So there's a macadamia white chocolate in the classic granola, but also in the grain-free version of it.
So as people have allergies to grain and things like that, is that why they're grain-free or?
Well, they're grain-free because it's another type of granola. It's made with seeds and nuts, and of course they're gluten-free, but they're also delicious, and it's a different way to enjoy granola. I like to mix both of them together, the regular and the grain-free. It's not just for people who have intolerances to gluten. It's really just to switch it up because we used our core competency to create something that was innovative and interesting. And it's more of a snacking option, I would say. And then we also have a muesli line, which is a high-end muesli line that we blend with some roasted nuts and seeds. And it's also used as an overnight porridge, this muesli. And this is our most
cereal.
It's our most recent addition in 2020 when we launched COVID and in full COVID mode. So, it was a tough launch.
Did you have to be shut down for a while or were you still considered an essential business?
We were considered an essential business, luckily. So, I mean, we never took a break, and it was a record year for us last year because people were eating at home and there's a lot of cereal consumption. Even though on the other end, my food service business completely dropped off.
Because they didn't have any customers.
Yeah, exactly. So I lost some sales at the profit of other sales. And so this, it was a good year for us, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to complain, but it was very tiring. It was tough, maneuvering through all that, sometimes you look back and even my employees look back on this time and say, everybody got a break except us, Even if it was an imposed break, we never got it. I kept going to work, business as usual. My employees kept going to work, it's like, it was nothing, there was no relief. So there was just extra stress.
Yeah. Well, there were other people that were out of business, right? There were other people that were out of business, shut down. They didn't have that choice, but I guess people also needed you. But I think a lot of it, did you find that because you knew your business and you knew your marketing, and you knew your numbers, it was easier to make a shift in the business, knowing that, well, our hospitality business is going to go down. We got to get this up. Did it make it easier because you were more prepared with and more knowledgeable about your business?
Well, I mean, there was I'm part of this entrepreneur club, and we assisted there was this presentation of like, okay, now there's a crisis going on and how you should be managing your cash flow and your money.
Oh, okay.
And we were like, told how to play defensively in this context. And we didn't know that the grants were coming and that they were going to give some, support.
Canada too, right? They gave you grants and okay. Same type of thing. So it was almost like a mastermind mentoring group, right?
Yeah. And it was just like, because, and it was it's a first, right? Nobody's been through a pandemic that's alive today, but at the same time, they give good advice in terms of how to make sure that you have what you need to be able to get through this with all the uncertainty that was associated with the period,
Right. Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that. I'm sure a lot of people didn't have those resources, and and you're doing it kind of blindly, right? At that point, you didn't know how long this would last. I think when it first started, I was sitting on my couch in my pajamas, and I was thinking, well, in 3 weeks, I mean, we'll be back to work, and I don't have to get. And then I realized, oh my God, I better set up an office in my house and put on a shirt and wash my face, go on Zoom, and start connecting with the world, because people are going to think you died during the pandemic, and what happened to Mitch? So I think it became very evident that this was going to go on for a while. And being in your business, you didn't know what was going to happen in terms of food. People still need food, right? They had to buy it, but it was going to be a bit of a shift. But so there's also snacks on your website too, or is that really the granola, but just as a snack?
We have the trail mixes. We do very
Okay.
gourmet trail mixes with sulfite free, strawberries, cherries, blueberries. Nothing we do is just basic, straightforward. It's been done before. We like to always put extra value, extra care, extra flavor. We want to be very gourmet and always.
That's the artisanal side of it, though, right? I mean,
and the artistic, I would have to say, the very gourmet, artistic. There's nothing ordinary that comes out of my plant. I mean, we roast the coconut,
yourself
pieces, and we salt them. And we double roast the almonds, and we caramelize the pecans with maple syrup. There's so much love and effort in everything that we do. So you can't just come and copy us. You can try to do the same thing, but we like to consider ourselves, in French, it's inimitable. Like there's no way to imitate us,
Yeah, right. They can learn from you, but they can't steal from you. So you're buying most of your ingredients raw, right? I mean, the nuts are raw. Everything's raw. You're toasting it there. You're dealing with. Well, that's really great. So we had talked about, if anybody's listening, so this episode will probably come out in maybe a month and a half, so maybe early December. So hopefully, because I know you were having some website problems with the US side. So I don't know if today I can order your product, because I want to after this talk. I'm very hungry now. But you're working on that, right? So hopefully by then the link will be in the show notes. People can go to the website, because you can't buy it in the States yet, but you can buy it online through you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So that's your promise to me, right? You'll get the website up and running and working.
Yeah. No, I'm on it right after this call.
Okay. So I know we've been on almost an hour. I can't thank you enough, because not only is your business really interesting and exciting, and I'm going to watch you and follow your growth and all that stuff, but you have so much to offer to the people listening, based on your experience. I mean, you're doing it all the right way in an industry where you really didn't know a lot about, except you liked it, and you figured it out. And it's like you said, you got to figure it out every day, right? Every day is a new challenge, and there's something you got to do. But when you're prepared and you're good at all the planning that you do, it does get a little bit easier, right? I mean, when you deal with another issue that comes up, or there's another opportunity, you get better at seeing these things and dealing with them along the way. And there's a lot to be said for that. So I thank you very much for sharing.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my story. And let me tell you, 20 years later, I did achieve my objectives.
Yeah.
I got 3 kids, a well-balanced life, and I do, make the money that I wanted to be able to make. So that for me is huge.
Right.
And I'm already successful in terms of my opinion and my judgment and my, looking back on it, I consider myself as, having succeeded in what I set out to do, so it's not like I'm not in a rat race anymore,
right.
I'm content.
Well, people can get to the other side of the fence if you just keep doing it the right way. All right. So before we go off, and I thank you very much, is there anything that's in the hopper that's coming that you're working on, a new product line or anything like that we should know about? As a secret, like inside, this is like when you used to make the food in your apartment once a month as secret. So is there anything we can share that might be coming that's in R&D, so to speak?
Yeah, well, we're coming out with a really refined branding.
Okay.
That's going to go on our packaging. And it's going to be, I can tell you now, it's going to be just La Fourmi. So we wanted to simplify the name, which is a mouthful to most Anglophones. And so it's just going to be La Fourmi. And that's what people call us. It's like our nickname, and so everybody calls us La Fourmi. So we're just going to be called La Fourmi, and it's going to be a really sleek branding. And we're coming out with a really artistic, beautiful new packaging for the grind granola line. And we've been working on that since spring, and it's hopefully going to come out early 2022, but it's going to be like really for us groundbreaking in terms of how we innovate our brand image, and we're hoping to elevate the product and really showcase the value of what we put in our products with this new branding. So that's something that's important for us, and that's going to be a really important milestone, especially for venturing into new territories.
Sure. And can people follow you on social media? Do you have a Facebook,
everything.
Instagram, the whole thing, right?
You are very active on Facebook and bilingual publications, and same thing with Instagram, LinkedIn, very active there if people want to link up with me. We update our website constantly, and I have an entrepreneurial blog on my website where I give pretty much my 2 cents, and I share my opinion about topics related to entrepreneurships, which sometimes are off the beaten path.
Yeah. Well, it's just something you learned. I think that's great, because it's always good to give back, right? To share with others that are maybe, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the podcast, right? Hopefully people will learn from what you learned. Maybe
it's
improve their
bit
chances.
Of like, by the way, guys.
Right. You might want to try this, or I had this problem and I solved it this way. And okay. So we'll put links in the show notes to your LinkedIn profile, Facebook, Instagram, the blog on the website, and we'll hopefully get some people to try out the products in the United States. We got to get them into stores. So if anybody's listening who's a distributor or working, reach out to Geneviève and let's get them in the United States. So I thank you very, very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Mitch.
Have a good weekend.
You too.